When I overheard those words in my own house, my world collapsed in seconds. "She's too old to fight back," they whispered. "She's weak, helpless. We'll take it all." My own family, the ones I raised, the ones I loved with every piece of my heart, thought I was nothing but a frail old woman ready to fade away. But they didn't know the fire still burning in me, or the secret I'd kept buried for decades, waiting for the right moment to strike. Margaret, 78, sits alone at a worn oak dining table in her modest two-story home in a quiet Ohio town. Snow dusts the windows, Christmas lights twinkling faintly outside. Her hands, gnarled with arthritis, tremble as she clutches a faded family photo album. Her eyes, clouded with cataracts, shimmer with unshed tears as she traces the edges of a photo. A young couple smiling, her late husband George standing tall beside her. Margaret, whispering, "Oh, George, you always said I was stronger than I knew. I hope you're right, because I'm going to need every ounce of that strength now." The camera lingers on her face, resolute despite the lines of age, as soft piano music swells, mournful yet hopeful. The screen fades to black, leaving the audience hanging on her words. 2 weeks earlier, Margaret's dining room glows with the warmth of Thanksgiving. Candles flicker, casting golden light on a table laden with roasted turkey, cranberry sauce and pumpkin pie. The scent of sage and butter fills the air. Margaret sits at the head of the table, her white hair neatly pinned, her smile kind but tired. Around her are her 2 children, Richard, 52, a slick real estate agent with a forced grin, and Ellen, 48, a nurse with sharp eyes and a tight-lipped smile. Their spouses, Linda and Tom, chat loudly, while their teenage kids, Emma and Jake, fiddle with their phones. The atmosphere feels festive, but an undercurrent of tension ripples beneath the surface. Thanksgiving was Margaret's sacred tradition. For 50 years she'd hosted it in this very house, the one she and George built with every penny they scraped together. The walls held memories of laughter, tears and love, first steps, first fights, first loves. But this year, something was wrong. The laughter was too loud, the smiles too wide, and Margaret, with her sharp mind still intact despite her frail body, felt the shift like a cold wind. Margaret passes a bowl of mashed potatoes, her hands trembling slightly. Margaret. "Richard, Ellen, it's so good to have you all here, this house. It's been too quiet since your father passed 3 years ago." Richard, glancing at Ellen, his tone syrupy. "Yeah, Ma, it's great to be back. You holding up okay here? All alone in this big place?" His eyes flicker with something, greed perhaps. Ellen leans forward, her smile practiced, almost rehearsed. "Ellen, we worry about you, Mum. This house, all these stairs. It's a lot for you now. Maybe it's time to think about a smaller place, somewhere easier." Margaret's smile falters, but she recovers quickly, nodding politely. Margaret. "Oh, I'm fine, dear. This house holds too many memories to leave. Your father's garden out back, the swing set you two used to fight over. It's home." The camera zooms in on Ellen's face, her lips twitching as if hiding a secret. Richard exchanges a subtle nod with Linda, who jumps in to change the subject. Linda, overly cheerful. "Let's talk about dessert. Margaret, your pecan pie is legendary. You've got to share that recipe one day." The family laughs, but the camera catches Margaret's hands, gripping her fork a little too tightly. Her eyes dart between her children, searching their faces. Margaret wasn't fooled. She'd overheard them earlier when they thought she was napping in her armchair by the fireplace. Whispers in the kitchen, sharp and cutting. Inheritance. Sell the house. She won't last long. Her own children, plotting to take the home she and George poured their lives into. But what hurt most wasn't their greed. It was the betrayal. After all she'd sacrificed for them, how could they think she was too weak to fight? As the family clears the table, Margaret excuses herself, claiming fatigue. She shuffles to the living room, pausing by a framed photo of George on the mantel, a handsome man with kind eyes and a mischievous grin. She touches the frame gently. Margaret, to herself. They think I'm finished, George. But I've got one more fight in me, for you, for us. The camera pans to the snowy backyard, where George's old garden lies dormant under a blanket of white. The music turns ominous, fading to black. Margaret's children thought they held all the cards. They thought she was too old, too frail to stand in their way. But they didn't know the secret she'd kept hidden in the attic, a secret that would turn their world upside down. Late that night, the house is silent except for the creak of floorboards. Margaret climbs the attic stairs, her breath visible in the cold air. She's wrapped in a wool shawl, a flashlight trembling in her hand. The attic is a maze of dust-covered trunks, old furniture and cobwebs. She kneels by a locked cedar chest, her fingers fumbling with a small brass key. Margaret hadn't climbed these stairs in years. Her knees ached, her heart raced, but she had to find it. The truth she and George had buried long ago. A truth that could save her home and expose her family for who they really were. She opens the chest, revealing a treasure trove of memories. Old letters tied with ribbon, a baby shoe, a stack of yellowed documents. At the bottom lies a leather-bound diary, its pages brittle with age. Margaret's hands tremble as she lifts it, her flashlight casting shadows on the walls. Margaret, reading aloud, voice soft. June 12th, 1965. George and I made a promise today. No matter what, we'd protect this house, this land, for our family. But there's something we never told the children. Something only we knew. Something we swore to take to our graves. She flips to a folded document tucked inside the diary. A deed, stamped and notarized, with George's bold signature scrawled at the bottom. Her eyes widen as she reads it, her breath catching Margaret, whispering, "It's still here, after all these years. Oh, George, you knew this day would come." The camera zooms in on the deed, its edges worn but the words clear. Margaret's fingers trace the text, her lips parting in shock. What Margaret held in her hands wasn't just a piece of paper. It was a weapon, one that could unravel decades of lies and greed. But using it would mean tearing her family apart, exposing secrets that could shatter the fragile bonds she'd spent a lifetime building. Could she do it? Could she betray the ones she loved to save what mattered most? Margaret clutches the deed to her chest, tears streaming down her face. The flashlight flickers, casting her shadow like a ghost against the attic walls. The screen fades to black, the music haunting and suspenseful. 1 week later, Margaret's living room is warm with the glow of a crackling fireplace. Family photos line the mantel. Richard and Ellen as children, George pushing them on swings, Margaret baking in the kitchen. Richard, Ellen, Linda and Tom sit on the couch, their smiles forced, their eyes darting nervously. Margaret sits in an armchair, her face unreadable, her hands folded calmly in her lap. Mr. Thompson, a stern lawyer in his 60s with wire-rimmed glasses, stands by the fireplace holding a leather briefcase. Margaret had called this meeting, but her children thought they were in control. They'd spent weeks plotting, whispering in corners, convincing themselves that Margaret was too old, too frail to stand in their way. They'd already contacted a realtor, already imagined the millions they'd split from selling her home. They were wrong. Richard, leaning forward, voice smooth. "Ma, we've been talking, and we think it's time to sell the house. You could move into that nice retirement home on Maple Street. It's got everything you need, nurses, activities, even a little garden." Ellen, nodding, her tone gentle but calculated. "And the money from the sale could help us all, Mum. You'd want that, right? To help your family? We could set you up comfortably, and there'd be plenty left for us. I mean, for the future." Margaret's eyes narrow, but she says nothing, letting them dig their own graves. The camera catches the greedy glint in Richard's eyes, the way Ellen's fingers twist nervously in her lap. Margaret, calmly. "You want to sell my home, the home your father and I built with every dime we had, the home where you took your first steps, where we celebrated every birthday, every Christmas. Is that really what you want? Richard, laughing nervously. It's not about wanting, Ma. It's about what's practical. You can't keep up with this place. Cleaning, repairs, those steep stairs. And honestly, it's worth a fortune now. The market's hot. Linda nods eagerly, but Tom shifts uncomfortably, avoiding Margaret's gaze. They thought they had her cornered. They thought she'd crumble under their pressure, sign the papers, and fade quietly into a nursing home. But Margaret wasn't the weak, helpless woman they believed her to be. And Mr. Thompson, standing quietly by the fireplace, was about to prove it. Mr. Thompson clears his throat, stepping forward with a folder in hand. The family turns to him, confused. Mr. Thompson. Mrs. Larson, shall I proceed? Margaret nods, her eyes locked on her children. The room grows deathly silent as Mr. Thompson opens the folder, revealing the deed from the attic. Mr. Thompson. This is the original deed to this property, signed by George and Margaret Larson in 1965. But there's something you all need to know. Something your parents never told you. Richard and Ellen exchange a glance, their smiles fading, their faces paling. The music swells, dramatic and foreboding. What was written in that deed? And why had Margaret kept it hidden for so long? The truth was about to change everything, and the family would never be the same. The tension in the living room is thick enough to choke on. Mr. Thompson holds the deed, his voice steady but grave. Richard leans forward, his jaw tight, while Ellen clutches her husband's arm. Mr. Thompson. When George and Margaret bought this land in 1965, they hired a surveyor to assess its value. What they discovered was extraordinary. A natural gas reserve, one of the largest in Ohio, lies beneath this property. Your parents knew this, but they chose to keep it quiet. They didn't want the land torn up by drilling companies, didn't want their home reduced to a paycheck. They wanted it preserved, for their family, for their legacy. Ellen gasps, her hand flying to her mouth. Richard's face hardens, his greed now unmistakable. Richard, angrily. You knew about this, Ma. A gas reserve, that's worth millions, and you never told us. We could have been set for life. Margaret, voice steady but laced with pain. Your father and I made a promise, Richard. This house, this land, it's not just money. It's our legacy. It's where we raised you, where we laughed, cried and loved. It's where your father proposed to me in the backyard, where we buried his old dog under the oak tree. But you only see dollar signs. Ellen's eyes well with tears, her voice trembling. Ellen. Mum, we didn't mean... We just thought... You're getting older, and we wanted to make things easier for you. For all of us. Margaret, cutting her off, voice rising. Easier for who, Ellen? For you? For your bank accounts? You thought I was weak, helpless, an old woman you could push around. But I'm not done living, and I'm not done fighting for what's right. Mr. Thompson raises a hand, silencing the room. Mr. Thompson. There's more. The deed includes a clause written by George himself. If this house is ever sold without Margaret's consent, the land and its resources revert to a trust for local charities. Specifically, the Ohio Children's Fund and the Veterans Home. You'd get nothing. The room erupts in chaos. Richard leaps to his feet, shouting, his face red with fury. Richard, this is outrageous. You can't do this, Ma. That's our inheritance. You're stealing from your own kids. Ellen buries her face in her hands, sobbing. Linda tries to calm Richard, but he shakes her off. Tom sits silently, his head bowed. Margaret, calmly, but with steel in her voice. I'm not stealing anything, Richard. You're the ones trying to steal my home, my memories, my life. I raised you better than this. The camera catches Margaret's face, calm, resolute, but with a flicker of sorrow. The music swells, heavy with anticipation. The truth was out, and it burned like wildfire. Margaret's children had betrayed her, exposed their greed in the harsh light of that deed. But now they faced a choice: respect their mother's wishes, or lose everything they thought they'd gain. But the story wasn't over. There was one more secret, one that would break Margaret's heart all over again and force her to make the hardest decision of her life. Late that night, Margaret sits alone in her bedroom, the diary open on her lap. The room is dimly lit by a bedside lamp, casting soft shadows on the floral wallpaper. A grandfather clock ticks in the hallway, its rhythm steady but ominous. Tears stream down Margaret's face as she reads a passage aloud, her voice breaking. Margaret. October 3rd, 1970. I saw her again today, George's daughter from before we met. Her name is Sarah, and she's grown now, living her own life in Cincinnati. She has his eyes, his smile. I want to tell Richard and Ellen they have a half-sister, but George says it's too late. It would tear the family apart, he says, but keeping this secret is tearing me apart. The camera zooms in on a faded photo tucked in the diary, a young woman maybe 20 with George's strong jaw and kind eyes. She looks eerily like Ellen. Margaret had carried this secret for decades. George had a daughter, Sarah, from a brief relationship in his early 20s, before he met Margaret. They'd kept her existence hidden to protect their young family, to avoid the scandal and pain it might cause. But now, with Richard and Ellen's betrayal fresh in her heart, Margaret wondered if it was time to tell the truth and give Sarah what was rightfully hers. Margaret picks up the phone, her hands shaking as she dials a number scrawled in the diary's margin. The line rings, each tone echoing like a heartbeat. Margaret, voice trembling. Hello, Sarah. This is Margaret Larson. I was married to your father, George. We need to talk. The other end of the line is silent for a moment, then a soft, hesitant voice responds. Sarah. Mrs. Larson, I don't know what to say. I've always wondered about him. Is this real? Margaret. It's real, Sarah, and I'm so sorry it's taken me this long. Can you come to the house? There's something you need to know, something I need to make right. The camera lingers on Margaret's face, a mix of fear and resolve. The screen fades to black, the music swelling with emotion. Margaret had opened a door she'd kept locked for decades. Inviting Sarah into her life meant risking everything, her children's trust, her family's fragile bonds. But it also meant a chance to heal, to honour George's memory in a way she'd never dared. What would Sarah bring to this fractured family? And could Margaret face the consequences of her choice? 2 weeks later, Margaret's kitchen is warm with the scent of fresh coffee. The snow has melted, leaving the backyard muddy but hopeful, with crocuses peeking through the soil. Margaret sits at the table, her hands wrapped around a mug. Across from her is Sarah, a kind-looking woman in her early 60s, her hair streaked with grey, her face a mirror of George's. They've been talking for hours, the diary open between them. Sarah's arrival was like a gust of wind through a dusty room. She was hesitant at a dusty room. She was hesitant at first, unsure of her place in this stranger's home. But Margaret's warmth, her stories of George, had begun to bridge the gap. Yet the hardest part was still to come, facing Richard and Ellen, who had no idea their half-sister existed. Sarah. I never wanted anything from you, Margaret. I didn't even know my father's name until I was 18. My mother, she only told me he was a good man who couldn't stay. But hearing you talk about him, about this house, it's like I'm meeting him for the first time. Margaret reaches across the table, squeezing Sarah's hand. Margaret. You deserve to know him, Sarah, and he would have loved you, I know it. He was so proud of his children, even if he couldn't be there for you. I kept this secret to protect my kids, but I see now it was a mistake. Your family too. Sarah's eyes fill with tears, but she smiles, a bittersweet echo of George's grin. Sarah. Thank you, Margaret, for finding me, for this. The camera pans to the backyard, where George's old garden is slowly coming back to life. The music is soft, tender, but with a hint of tension. Margaret had found a piece of George in Sarah, a connection she hadn't expected to feel. but the peace in her heart was fragile. Her children were coming tomorrow, and with them, a confrontation that would test her strength like never before. Could she hold her family together? Or would this final secret tear them apart for good? It's a snowy afternoon, 1 month after the first family meeting. Margaret's living room is packed. Richard, Ellen, Linda, Tom, and Sarah, whose presence sends a shockwave through the room. Mr. Thompson stands by Margaret's side holding a revised will. The fireplace crackles, but the air is icy with tension. Margaret had made her decision. She'd called Sarah, invited her to this final meeting, and rewritten her will. Her children thought they could take everything, bullying their helpless mother into submission. But Margaret was about to teach them a lesson in love, loyalty, and legacy, one they'd never forget. Richard, furious, pointing at Sarah. "Who is she, Ma? Some stranger you're bringing into our family? This is insane. What are you trying to pull?" Ellen, tearing up, voice shaking. "Mum, please, we didn't mean to hurt you. We just wanted what's best for you, for all of us. Who is this woman?" Margaret stands, her frail body radiating strength, her eyes blazing with a fire her children haven't seen in years. Margaret. "Best for who? For you? For your bank accounts? This is Sarah, your father's daughter, your half-sister. George had her before we met, and I kept her secret to protect you, to keep our family whole. But you've shown me what you value, and it's not family, it's greed." The room falls silent, the weight of her words crushing. Richard's face twists in disbelief, while Ellen gasps, her hands covering her mouth. Richard, a half-sister? You're telling us this now, after all these years? This is some kind of trick, isn't it? To cut us out. Ellen, sobbing. "Mum, why didn't you tell us? All this time. We had a sister." Sarah steps forward, her voice soft but firm, her eyes steady. Sarah. "I never wanted anything from you, Margaret, or from any of you. I only wanted to know my father. But I respect what Margaret's trying to do here. She's trying to save something bigger than all of us." Mr. Thompson opens the revised will, his voice cutting through the chaos. Mr. Thompson. Margaret Larson bequeaths this house and its land to a trust, to be maintained as a community centre for the elderly of this town. Any profits from the gas reserve will fund scholarships for local children. Sarah Larson is named executor of the trust to ensure George and Margaret's vision is honoured. Richard collapses into a chair, stunned, his face pale. Ellen sobs, reaching for Margaret's hand, but Margaret pulls away, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. Margaret. "I love you both, Richard, Ellen. I always will. But love isn't enough when there's no respect. This house, this land, it's not yours to sell. It's a legacy for this town, for the people who need it. Your father and I built it for love, not money. And Sarah, she understands that." Sarah nods, her eyes meeting Margaret's with gratitude and understanding. The camera lingers on their clasped hands, a quiet bond forming. Margaret had lost her children's loyalty, but she'd gained something greater, a legacy that would outlive her, a purpose that would touch countless lives. And in Sarah, she'd found a new connection, a piece of George she could finally embrace. But the wounds of betrayal ran deep, and the road to healing was far from over. 6 months later, spring has transformed Margaret's backyard. The garden is alive with colour, tulips, daffodils and roses blooming where George once tended the soil. Margaret sits on a bench, surrounded by children from the new community centre, laughing as they plant flowers. Sarah sits beside her, helping a young girl with a trowel. The house, now bustling with activity, is a beacon of hope in the small town. In the end, Margaret didn't just save her home, she saved her heart. She taught her children a lesson they'd never forget. Family isn't about what you take, but what you give. Richard and Ellen were still distant, grappling with their shame, but Margaret held no grudges. She'd found peace in the community she'd created, in the lives she touched, and in the daughter she'd welcomed home. Margaret watches the children, her eyes bright with purpose. She turns to Sarah, her voice soft. "Margaret, This is what George would have wanted, Sarah. A home for everyone, not just us. A place where love grows, not greed. Sarah squeezes her hand, her smile warm. Sarah, he'd be proud of you, Margaret, and I'm honoured to be part of this. The camera pulls back, showing the house alive with laughter, music playing softly from an open window. The sun sets, casting a golden glow over the garden. Life is too short for regrets, but it's never too late to make things right. Margaret's story reminds us that strength isn't in our years, but in our choices. It's in the courage to stand up, to forgive, to love, even when it hurts. Her legacy lives on, not in money, but in the lives she changed, the hearts she warmed, and the family she found when she thought all was lost. Please don't forget to like this video, share it with your loved ones, and subscribe to our channel for more heart-touching family stories that stay with you forever.